Three. Hi there, I'm Dave Bates from Science North, way up in Thunder Bay, and I'm here with Jazmin Pirozek. And today we're going to be talking a whole lot about plants and phytochemistry and traditional medicines and how to gather them and where to find them and everything that we can possibly think about. Thanks for joining us, Jazmin.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
As am I, because I got a whole. As you can probably tell, I'm here in the bush. I'm in a small sliver of the boreal forest, in a black spruce, sort of not quite a black spruce bog area, but we have a whole lot of sphagnum moss on the ground. And you've promised to take me through a few fantastic traditional medicines because you know just heaps and heaps about pretty much everything. But to start things off, what would you like to introduce yourself? Talk about where you're from, what you think, all that sort of thing.
Well, my name is Jazmin Pirozek, and I live in the Kenora district. And what's really interesting about where I live is there's 3 tree regions that meet in this area: the boreal forest, the Great Lakes St. Lawrence, and the prairie region. So I get a wide variety of different plants that I get to learn. Now, I still have a lot to learn, but that's why I like to come to study with you, Dave.
Oh, fantastic. Cool. Well, I'm going to be learning a whole bunch as we're going to talk about a bunch of plants you can find around here. But there's one we want to start off with that I know that's kind of your plant of specialty, which I spent about a couple of hours hopping through them bogs, and I found I was in the wrong bogs because I wasn't able to find it, and that's wike. So wike, that's also known as the calamus. What's the other name for it?
The scientific name is Acorus calamus variation americanus. And across the world, there's a different species. Across the pond, like in Poland, they have a species that is considered a triploid species. So it has more DNA than the ones that are available in Canada. Now, because it has a little bit less DNA, it is also different chemically. And the phytochemical readings that have come out of this specific plant show that it doesn't have the same concerning compound beta-acerone that is inside common calamus that you would find, online and everything. Like our species is, I guess, a predecessor to the species that's available everywhere else. When all the research that was done about calamus, it was calamus root, not americanus root. We call it wike.
Plants that end up with double the amount or triple the amount of DNA, or like where the chromosomes, that happens in the wild when you have plants that they start to divide into 2 and they just sort of stop and don't. So they'll end up with something called tetraploid. Those plants like that, those, if I remember correctly, they give us a lot more food, right? Is that so?
Yeah, I believe so.
Kind of funny. The ones over from Europe, they have extra DNA mixed in because of that. But I'm sorry I couldn't find it in the bogs or forests that I tromped through. But if I did, what would I be looking for?
I think the best descriptor is if you feel any of the grasses that are in the bogs, the bulrushes are going to be kind of scooped. They're going to have a scoop. So when you touch it and you feel it, it feels more like a scoop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when you identify calamus root, like our wike root, when you touch it, it's going to have 2 midribs on each side. So if you put your fingers together like this, it would fill the space. So it would almost feel like a diamond. If you were to cut it in a cross section, it would appear diamond shaped rather. And so, because there's many different grasses that are in the muskeg that can be shaped like M's or W's, depending on how you look at it. Or they'll have 1 midrib on the side. like a lot of the many grasses that we see in our area, they're going to have one thin midrib on one side. And so they're going to be kind of shaped like this. Many of our grasses are shaped like that you would see in the lawn. Yeah, and sweetgrass too. Sweetgrass has a midrib as well, except it's very shiny. It's a shiny plant.
And definitely not found in amongst the bogs and wetlands, that kind of stuff.
I can't say no because I haven't seen it there, but I have seen sweetgrass in Thunder Bay.
Oh,
yeah,
I've seen it here too, just never in amongst the bulrushes or cattails. No, but so wike, wike is. It looks like a diamond if you put your hands on it, but it's found in the same place you find cattails, and it's a little bit squishy. So what do you use wike for? What are the uses for it? I know there's a lot of them.
There's many. Now, most of the research that has been done, like I said, was done with the calamus root. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for research about calamus, like the scientists, we're still out on it because we don't have enough data at this point to say things definitively scientifically. But I can tell you traditionally, we use it for coughs, colds, flus, viral infections, infections of the skin, internal infections, sore teeth, very, very effective for sore teeth. And they most of the roots that are in the bogs and the muskegs, they're going to be rhizomes. So they're going to snake along, but they're not going to go deep like a taproot, like a carrot.
Kind of like this, right? This is the between these two plants of cattail. There's a rhizome that connects the two of them. Yes,
and many people think that cattails are bulbs. And I know someone that said that they think they found a bulb and they thought that was a cattail. And I said, no, that's an onion because they're mostly rhizomes in the muskeg. And if you found an onion, you found a prize. That's what I say. They're very good. Sweet.
But I know in the spring, I'm mostly interested in things you can eat in the forest. So I like the young cattail shoots that pop up, and you can chop them off, and they're still pretty tasty. Yeah. Oh, and we'd be able to find that. How about Sudbury? Wike, is it found towards Sudbury as well as up here?
Oh yeah, of course. So I spent a lot of time in the northern communities in Ontario, and for the life of me, I couldn't find wike there, and I tried to say wike, but different language than in the southern regions, the Ojibwe regions, and in northern regions, they're Ojibwe, so they just have a different way of speaking. So they call it kike-ish, which I just learned that kike-ish is that grass, and it's everywhere. They said everywhere.
Huh.
And I looked, but I didn't look hard enough, I guess.
Kind of like me right now. It's here. I just wasn't able to find it. Now, it's you were talking. It's good for sore throats and that kind of thing. And people use it. I know traditionally, it's the root that you use. Am I right? Where you take pieces and you chew it, and then at least this is the only way that I've ever used it before, where you chew it and it helps with sore throats after singing at a drum for a long time.
Yeah, that's a good thing to use it for because it would just freshen up the throat. I always like to think that it's good for keeping you hot in the wintertime. So I like to collect a lot. And if I'm going to be going out in the wintertime to go snowshoeing or something, I'll want to keep a piece in my mouth because it just creates a lot of heat in the chest. And creating a lot of heat helps to relieve a lot of these cold symptoms.
Huh.
Yeah, very good. It's very good.
We have someone who asks also how far north we can find it, other than there we go. Asking how far north we can find it. So it's down towards Sudbury, and it's found down there. And how far north does it go?
Nearly up to the tundra, to the borders of the tundra.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, so it has a very large geographic area, and probably, I think the geographic area, like the Florida Everglades, it would exist there as well.
And then all across North America, all across where in Europe does it how far does it go in Europe?
It's in the boreal forest region in Europe. So if you look at the tree region across the world of the boreal forest, it's the largest forest. You're going to find that species there, just not necessarily our variation of the species. Like our species came before evolutionarily than the triploid species. The triploid species has had more time on the land than the diploid species. That's my my scientific opinion, is that I believe that ours is a precursor to the triploid species that's in Poland.
We have someone asking about where you would find it in Sudbury. So like I was asking what sort of biome would you go about digging to find wike?
It's hard to say, but if you go to a place where you know there is a bog, a good bog, or even a pond, and you're going to see lily pad root. If you see lily pad root or lily pads in the pond, if you look at the outer edge, you're going to see bulrushes. And then if you go in a little bit further, so it's kind of, if you're coming into the bog, so you would see a number of grasses, and then you would see bulrushes, and it will be among those grasses, and it's interwoven. So it's very, very fragrant, very bright. Yes, very, very lemony. The grass itself it smells like lemon.
A lemony flavored,
lemony smelling grass, and the root smells differently.
It also has a spicy smell. That's phenomenal. We have a couple of people in the chat who are talking about the number of different plants that are found grown by the Odawa along the Water River, like corn, beans, and squash, and that kind of thing. And they were asking how many different people use wike across North America for the same purposes. So
I'm not sure how I would know, but anybody who knows it uses it. Anybody who knows that plant would know how to use it. And usually the Ojibwe shamans or the Médé people, they would know it very well. It's one of the first plants that would be learned traditionally.
And I know that the chewing it for singing, it's used amongst the Anishinaabe and also the Haudenosaunee. They used it for the same thing, for chewing, to keep singing for long and strong. But we have more plants to talk about. I know that you're an expert on wike, but we have a few more. If I can bring them up and show them to the camera.
Yeah, sure.
Sweet. All right. So we're going to start off with another one that I know you know a fair bit about, and that's one that's found all across the boreal forest. That's Labrador tea. Now, myself, I've only ever had this when it gets a little bit. You take it, you dry it, and have it as a pleasant tasting tea. But I know that because you're an Indigenous scholar of some renown, you know about a whole bunch of other uses for it, and of course, as a biochemist, you know a lot of the cool compounds that are found inside of it. So, what Labrador tea? What should I be using it for, other than just in drinking tea?
Well, if you prepare it properly, you're going to have a lot of vitamin C. We do know that, but vitamin C breaks down at very high temperatures. So if you just steep it gently at a very low temperature, and I'm not sure what its boiling point is. I can't think of it. Ascorbic acid is really low. If you just steep it very well, you would get a lot of vitamin C from it. And it's also for coughs and colds. But just don't have too much of it. You know, have just a couple cups a day is what I would recommend.
And I steep it at a somewhat low temperature. How long? I usually overdo it, and it comes out way too strong, and it.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, definitely probably not good for me either. But just for a few minutes or so.
No, I would do like a 10-minute steep on a low temperature.
A 10-minute steep on a low temperature. All right. Hopefully it'll probably taste a lot better then as well.
It'll be lemony too.
Huh. Cool. Well,
yeah, it's very lovely, and many people use it. Many people across the land use it. It's just not many, like I'll just note for others that not many animals actually eat it. So if you're looking for it in the boreal forest, you notice that no animal is eating it. So the issue is, well, I question what's in there that they won't ingest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what's in there where the animals are like, well, maybe I'll just have a bite of it right now. I won't eat a whole bunch of it. So I always like to question the animals. If the animals aren't eating a lot of it, then I don't eat a lot of it.
I'll take your advice. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. In the chat, there are a couple people who are talking about how Dominic Baudry is talking about how he uses wiki like one uses halls or fisherman's friends. Yeah. Which absolutely, because it helps the back of your throat and everything along there. And Linda May Wright has mentioned that Labrador.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
I just want to make a note. I want to make a note because the way the man asked the question, the way he spelt it weekend. And weekend is it's not weeke. Kike-ish is weeke. And so there's an issue, and there's a difference between and I'm just learning really that there's a difference in the naming. When you're from the northern communities, you use the word weekend for this root, but that's not what we're talking about. It's a different plant, because that weekend, I believe, is a blue flag lily or a relative of a blue flag lily. And there's different uses as well for that. But I just wanted to make sure that we understood that there's a different, this is kike-ish plant. So I'm sorry, I interrupted your go there. So let's
thanks. That's when it's really important to make sure we get talking about the right plants at the right times.
Yeah.
And Linda May Wright had mentioned Labrador tea is excellent for pain, and that's what she uses it for. There's a few people who are asking a little bit about you, because after all, the career of being an ethnobotanist is pretty fascinating. And how did you get on the path of becoming an ethnobotanist, and what is that exactly?
Well, an ethnobotanist is a person that uses plants, or I guess studied scholarly plants, how people use plants and the interaction between the two. I didn't get an ethnobotany degree. I got a biology degree and an undergraduate degree in anthropology. And because of the way in which I was doing my my studies, I considered it ethnobotany. But the school that I went to, like Lakehead University, is my alma mater. They don't have an ethnobotany program just because they don't have a lot of students. But I got to speak to a lot of ethnobotanists, and that's essentially what I was doing. But I have a master's of biology rather than master's of ethnobotany, which in the future I would like to get. But I got on this path because I got sick and there was no help. I couldn't get any help from the hospitals or the doctors, not because they didn't want to, but because it just wasn't possible. So I had to go. I felt like I had to go myself to go continue to learn to try to help myself to heal. And my family has used the plants, for millennia. And why am I not using the plants? So as soon as I started learning and I started drinking the plants, And it's hard to say it as a scientist, but the plants told me what they've done and told me how they react and taught me how to spend a lot of time with them. Like it took me, I think, almost 7 years to learn wike, to learn that calamus, our calamus root. It took me a very long time. So it does take a long time to spend with the plants. So anywhere, any bog I go to, I can find that. That's no problem for me because I know that plant. So my knowledge is a little bit not just scientific, but it's something that I explored within myself. It's really, really, and I'm going to devote my whole life to helping others in ways when the doctors or the hospitals are unable to help. I want to be able to help in an alternative way, like an integrative way. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier when we were chatting about you do everything is a little bit different than what's expected, but you're mentioning about when you were working with wike in the lab and were bringing in samples that you were using machines in a way that the people who were running them were kind of surprised at how you were using the mass spectrometer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, when I would bring my samples to the laboratory, I'd have to go in right at 8 a.m. because those samples, like I would have to go into the lab at 5, prepare my samples, and then go back, put them in at 8, and then go back at 4 because it needed the whole day for a lot of these analyses. And I'm glad I'm not the one running the machine. It's really just a couple buttons. I had to know how to do that too. But what was so surprising is normally the things that go through, like these vials that go through the GCMS, normally they know what's going to be in there. Like normally, like a scientist would be like, okay, I'm going to make this chemical and then we're going to get this readout and I'm going to get a predictable outcome. But there's zero predictable outcomes when it comes to chemotaxonomy or understanding what chemicals are in the plants. Like it was... So the readouts that I got were expansive, full chemicals. Like there's so many. And so the person who gave me my readout was like, wow, you got a hard job. Because normally people know what they're looking for and you have no idea.
And then you have to sort through it for the rest of a master's degree.
Yeah, that was terrible. I don't want to do that again.
You don't have to. You get to talk to people like me now about more plants.
Yes.
Great.
Let's do it.
All right. I have one here that I'm particularly fond of, just because we actually use this in some of our shows, and that is this is the club moss, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's type of Lycopodium. So this time of year, these guys here, of course, I know them because they. The spores are very, very. So this is this sort of the spore spike, and it's full of spores, which are very, very high in sort of lipids, but also hydrophobic. And when they go into a cloud, if you have a small bit of ignition in that cloud, they'll actually explode into a ball of fire, which is super cool. But I understand these are used medicinally too. Am I right in thinking about that?
Yeah, they're used medicinally. Yeah. Yeah, most of the understory plants in the boreal forest, they're very safe, I guess, safe to use. Novices should really take it easy when they mix plants, obviously. But anything that's on those understories, they're very astringent. And if they're very astringent, we mostly use those for kidney infections or issues with the digestive tract. Not necessarily bacterium in the digestive tract because the medicine doesn't make it there because it breaks down. But yeah, that's what I would use these mosses for.
Very cool. Well, speaking of other moss, we're sitting in an area that's full of sphagnum. We were talking earlier about the use of sphagnum as nature's pampers. Is that right?
Yeah.
Am I remembering correctly? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more absorptive than paper towel.
Fantastic, and it grows just about everywhere, which is really handy. You mentioned, oh, and JL Chung had asked, what ways people like, especially non-Indigenous people, can be respectful to local plants and medicines if they were interested in learning to work with them. So, where do people learn, particularly non-Indigenous people, do they learn about this kind of traditional knowledge? That's a tough.
Anybody, yeah, it's a tough question, but anyone can go and sit with a plant and learn all about it. I like to say I use my 5 senses or my 6 senses, depending on how I'm feeling that day. And we don't necessarily taste, but you're going to smell it, you're going to touch it, you're going to observe it like a scientist would. You're going to see its leaf shapes, you're going to see how the veins are. You're going to try to learn as much as you can from it, just based on your senses. Your senses will teach you. And we just have to take the time to sit with a plant, and when I say plant, I mean trees and tiny little beings, even the water plants that look like animals. It's just interesting to spend time. You just got to spend your time. That's what I say.
Spend time with the plants and
spend time. They like you.
I like them, particularly plants that are, again, like I mentioned, the ones that you can eat, like the strawberry. I have some small strawberry leaves here, not in season, so nothing to be eaten on that. But if I remember, could you speak much to the medicinal uses of strawberry or the heartberry? I know there's a ton.
Oh yeah, lots.
Right.
So strawberries are really, really neat, because if you sat with that plant, you would learn quite a bit. It likes to snake along the ground, just like wike. It just snakes along, and then it grows little leaves, and so I follow those rhizomes, and then I curl them up into a ring, and then you just throw the whole ring in a teapot and you drink it. And I'm going to ask you, what would you use that berry for?
Well, like I say, I'm interested in wild plants for their tastiness, but I heard that it's good for the kidney. Am I remembering that right, or am I remembering it wrongly?
It would work.
Mm-hmm.
It would work, but you called it something.
Oh, the heartberry.
Yeah, the heartberry. Oh, Damon. It's the heartberry. It's heart medicine, and it's circulatory medicine. And if you look at it, the plant, the roots and the rhizomes, they're red. They're bright red. And if you look at it in the time of year that you would pick the little tiny hearts off of them, you would kind of see how it's reminiscent to it's analogous to our circulatory system. And I would love to say homologous, but I don't want to get in trouble. But it's not the same system, but it's very similar. It looks similar, and it has a similar purpose.
Huh. Yeah, and speaking of plants that crawl low and along the forest floor, I have another one here. This one found around Thunder Bay into the north a whole bunch, and it goes down fairly far. But that's kinnikinnick or bearberry. Am I right? Am I right in identifying this as kinnikinnick? It's kind of hard to tell without the small berries. Or
I want you to bite one of those leaves. Just chew it good. And they might be a little bit hard. Chew them and let me know if there's a flavor, because there's many plants that look like that.
Oh, that's wintergreen.
Yes, you did it. Yay. I wouldn't just tell you to do a random thing, but you found the wintergreen, and the wintergreen, that species of wintergreen, grows alongside the cranberries in the sphagnum.
Which is all around me. As you can't see, I'll bring the camera in right close, and you can see the wintergreen traveling along the ground. Unfortunately, there are no cranberries that are growing amongst them right now, but it's fantastic. What about, as far as wintergreen goes? Do you have any medicinal uses or You're saying facts with the wintergreen plants?
Yeah, I like to mix it with teas. We don't use a whole bunch of it too because it's one of those plants that you could overdo. Same with Labrador tea. Like it's good for pain. Same with wintergreen, very good for pain because it has high salicylates, which are the precursor to acetyl salicylic acid, which is ASA. So aspirin. So there is aspirin compounds in most of the plants that are in the understory. And that's why I say like they're very astringent. They're hydrophobic usually, so they push water away. And so they do that in our body. They dry, just like dogwood would dry things that are inside the body if you're to use them that way.
That's fascinating.
I'm so happy you found that. That's so exciting.
Yeah, so am I. It tastes delicious, and as we all know, I'm driven by food.
Yeah, there you go.
Speaking of being driven to do things, I have another plant here. Not from this one is not from immediately in this Bruce bog, but this one that I'm also a huge fan of because this little plant here, I believe, is some blueberry or a snippet off a blueberry bush. So, blueberries, of course, being super tasty and a huge part of our diets, at least in Northern Ontario and Thunder Bay. But can you speak much to their use in traditional medicine?
Yeah, that plant and the whole plant, the root and everything, we brew that up to lower blood sugar and to help regulate blood sugar.
So to make a tea of this, what's the best way to do that?
You would take the whole plant, make sure you grab the root and everything, and make sure you make your exchange, like put your tobacco down or whatever it is you do. And you would brew it, just steep it for a very long time, a lot of it too, quite a bit. And you'd want to get it before it really turns red. Yeah, because its chlorophyll is broken down in it. And that plant will go a little bit red, not as much as other plants turn red. Yeah.
Now, this plant here, it's one of many you can find in the boreal forest, and there are a few people who are asking, are there any field guides that you would recommend for someone who wants to start exploring wild plants without having access to an expert like yourself?
Yeah, my favorite field guide is the Peterson guides. The one I particularly like to use is the Peterson guide. There's one for Eastern medicinal plants. And that means like the Eastern portion of North America. And then there's another Peterson guide called Wild Foods, which you'd be pretty interested in. But it's the Peterson guides. You can pretty much find them at gas stations, but I really like those ones. The man who edited those books was the person from the University of Ottawa who reviewed my thesis. Yeah. So Arneson, he's excellent. So, and he knows quite a bit, just like Nancy Turner, Wade Davis, Yeah, very, very intelligent ethnobotanists in the country.
Speaking of intelligent ethnobotanists in the country, there are a couple people who are asking how you are one of them, and so how did people go about getting in contact with you to learn more about wild plants or about your work in northern communities?
Yeah, I have a healing center, and I finally acquired some property, 40 acres of land, very similar to what you're in right now. My healing center, Boom Bay Integrative Healing. You can go on Facebook and search Boom Bay Integrative Healing, and then you can just shoot me a message there, or you can find me on Facebook under my name. You won't miss me, that's for sure. And there's, even if you Googled my name, you'd be able to find me. Yeah.
So we're running a little bit over time, but I have a question I have to ask you, because this time of year, there's all kinds of amazing plants that can be found. what is the wildest one that you could find in your area or my area? The wildest, like the most unusual, unexpected plant that you might happen upon while wandering.
Oh yeah. Still, the most shocking plant was a prickly pear. The prickly pear. Yeah, prickly pear cactus. Yeah, and they grow in like the woods. Like I said, it's a meeting of 3 tree regions, so we have a little bit more diversity here because we get all your plants plus a number of others. And the cactus, it's like the northernmost reaches of this specific cactus. Now it's wild to find because you would get off your boat on an island, start walking on some black moss, and these little guys are hidden in the moss, and they'll stick to you. Like if you're barefoot, they'll stick to your foot, and then you'll know. You'll learn that plant too. Yeah, really cute. They're just tiny though, and they don't have fruit. They just reproduce via cloning. So they want to break off into you so that you carry them other places. That's their job.
Cacti in Northern Ontario.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It doesn't even make sense. Wow.
No.
Like there's some beautiful plants here, but I understand why they're here. But the cactuses, I have much to learn.
And so do all of we. But we'll have to leave. We're a little bit over time, so I'd like to thank you so much for joining us and chatting. And but before we end, is there anything else that you'd like to say to the audience, or any knowledge about traditional plants that you want to ask about that I haven't touched on?
I would just say, please, when you go to learn the plants, if you were to go out to the woods and just look, make sure to make your exchange. Like be grateful and have gratitude, because these things are more aware of you than you would ever know. You don't even know how aware of you they are. They're as aware as you or I, and that's my belief. So be respectful, because they know. They have knowledge like we don't understand.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll leave you be, and I'll start hiking back out of the forest. So thanks very much. Thanks for everyone who was watching on the stream. I hope you learned a whole bunch, and thanks for joining me and Jazmin as she told us about wild plants and medicinal plants and the world of ethnobotany and her life as a botanist. So thank you so much, and I hope you can join us for the next Bluecoat Talk later on this fall. So thank you very much.
That'd be wonderful. Thanks for having me.
So long.